when you see stuff on the news about the stocks, they talk about how the stocks are doing, okay? And they talk about stock indexes. Stock indexes are going to be they measure the change in the price of a specific set of stocks, okay? So oftentimes when you watch the news at night and they talk about the stock market, they will talk about 3 specific stock indexes. Can you even tell me one of them? Talk about 3 of them, and they'll talk about if they're up or down or how many points. Sam?
I don't know if this is right. Is this like the Dow?
Yep. The Dow is the one, and it is the first one I have. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, otherwise known as the DJIA or the Dow. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was the first stock index that was started. It was started by literally 2 guys by the name of Dow and Jones. They worked for a little paper, may have heard of it, Wall Street Journal. Heard of that one before? Okay. But basically what Dow and Jones looked at is that they said that, okay, people will go and buy stock. And then they'll say, okay, well, how's my stock doing today? They'll look it up in the paper, and they'll look up their individual company, and they'll say, oh, McDonald's is up 50 cents today. That's great, right? Right? I don't know. Is that good? Is it good that it's up 50 cents? What do you think? I don't know. It's up. That's good, right? What if I told you that most stocks were up by $2? Yeah, now your 50 cents doesn't sound so great, does it? What if I said that most stocks were down $5? Now 50 cents sounds phenomenal. Okay? So basically the idea that Dow and Jones had was they're like, okay, we need some sort of measuring stick to be able to compare stocks to. Because otherwise people are looking at it and they're looking at their individual company and they can't get a good feel of how is the market doing as a whole? Are most stocks going up? Most stocks going down? How does my stock compare to that? Okay? So Dow and Jones chose the top 30 companies, the largest 30 companies on the New York Stock Exchange. And they took the average of those 30 companies and they would report that in the Wall Street Journal. Okay? And they would track how those 30 companies are doing. Now, it's gotten a lot more complicated than that over the years, and they changed what companies are on the Dow, but this principle still applies. So some of the companies that are currently on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, 3M, McDonald's, Disney, Walmart, Microsoft, Procter & Gamble, Verizon, Hewlett-Packard, ExxonMobil, Caterpillar, Boeing, Bank of America, AT&T, I could go on, okay? But those are some of the companies that are on there, okay? So that's the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Anybody know of any of the other stock indexes that they report on the news? How did they get one? What are the other 2 stock indexes that they report on the news? They talk about the Dow Jones Industrial Average. They also talk about Nasdaq. Nasdaq's confusing because Nasdaq's the stock exchange and an index. Nasdaq is actually measures how all of the companies on Nasdaq are doing. And if you think about it, Nasdaq was electronic the whole time, so it's a lot easier for them to measure how all of those companies were doing when they were originally electronic. It was a lot harder for the New York Stock Exchange when they weren't electronic. Easier for them now. And last one. So the Dow, the Nasdaq, and there's a third one, starts with an S. Ever hear of the S&P 500? Yes, the S&P 500 are 500 companies from the New York Stock Exchange and Nasdaq. So the S&P 500 will take the 500 companies from a variety of different industries. The idea being it's a broader base and it's a broader look at the economy as a whole. Okay. They will look at companies from a lot of different industries. So, for example, they look at companies from information technology, the financial market, healthcare, consumer discretionary, energy, industrials, consumer staples, and materials. So those are just kind of a look at a broad base at the companies that are on the S&P 500. Mark.
So these three
Mm-hmm.
stock indexes take, so the Dow takes those 30.
Yep.
Compares those.
It will look at the change in price of those 30 companies, okay, and
Over a day or
oh yes, from the close of yesterday to the close of today. How did those 30 companies do, basically? So they have this complicated formula, and I'm not going to go into it, but basically when they report it on the news, they report it in points. Basically, they're talking about if those 30 companies, for example, if they went up today in price, if their stock prices went up, or if their stock prices dropped.
Is it just a way to compare your stocks that you own against those?
It's a way to do that, but also be able to tell as a whole, how is the market doing? As a whole, how is the stock exchange doing?
So when the stock market crashed in the 1920s, that was did everything go under?
In 1929, the big crash that everybody talks about, the Dow, obviously the Nasdaq wasn't around, but the Dow did drop its lowest point at that point. It has actually had bigger drops since then, comparatively, but at the time it seemed like a lot, and looking back it seemed like a lot just because of where stock prices were at the time. Okay? Alright, any other questions? Okay, one last thing that I wanted to talk about, a general way to determine how stock prices are doing. People talk about a bull and a bear market. Have you ever heard of bull and bear markets? Okay. People talk about bull markets. Bull markets are generally when stock prices are rising. Bear markets are generally when stock prices are falling. Ever see this picture before? Yes? Okay. This is a big bronze bull statue that is outside the wall of the stock exchange, the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street. You can go up and touch him. Okay. But basically, it's supposed to be a representation of the markets doing well. Okay. All right. So